Welcome back. So Deputy President Mashatile is today expected to host Vietnam Vice President Xuan in Pretoria. The official visit is aimed at strengthening the ties of friendship and solidarity between the two nations. The Southeast Asian nation's Vice President also met with the ANC top brass led by the party's Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula. Our reporter Kailihle Kumalo has more. Kailihle, a good morning to you. Well, talk to us firstly about this, the importance really of this official visit by the Vietnam Vice President.
Well, absolutely, Naledi. It's quite a very important day for South Africa and Vietnam. As you know, that this year marks exactly 30 years of diplomatic ties between these two nations. You know, they might be geographically very apart. Vietnam right in Southeast Asia and South Africa right in the southern tip of Africa. But there's quite a lot of commonalities that the two nations really do work on. You go back to the time when South Africa was a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. There was a great deal of support from Vietnam, but also South Africa also by the very same vein returned the favor, so to speak, when they supported Vietnam as well. But quite a number of issues really that the two countries really just look at in terms of where they are standing, but also quite a very important moment also for the two governing parties in these two countries. Naledi, like you alluded, that Vice President Xuan had an opportunity to go to Mashatile House, visiting the ANC, where also they were talking about deepening the bilateral relations between their governing parties. And from the perspective of Vietnam, they do talk about a very effective and also quite a very important cooperation in so many aspects with South Africa.
Yeah, I'm keen to hear really what the agenda looks like in terms of some of the big talking points. I mean, where we have seen these big state visits, a lot of the time, energy becomes a big talking point for some of our leaders, correct?
Well, that's very correct, Naledi. As you would recall that there was a time where the electricity minister, Xuan, went to South Africa's partners, the likes of China and also some of the global north countries like Germany and many others as well. Vietnam as well was one of those countries that got consultation in terms of how to deal with the issue of energy, because also at some point they also had a similar experience when it comes to the energy security. But also, apart from that, the issue of economic relations between these two nations is going to feature high. You go back to the trade volumes last year, it was just over about 23 billion rand. So there's quite a room for improvement in terms of making sure that they do improve to that effect, especially because we know that in terms of the Vietnam exports to South Africa, it's mainly, you know, just clothing items and also the cell phones, and for South Africa to Vietnam it's predominantly minerals, chemicals and the like. So there's quite a room to really just maneuver in this aspect, especially because in the wake of the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area, there's quite a great deal potential for the two countries to work together. South Africa is still seen as a gateway to Southern Africa and by extension to the continent. So quite a lot of agreements will be signed by the delegation led by Vice President Xuan and also a delegation led by Deputy President Mashatile.
Yeah. What does the day look like then in terms of the pomp and ceremony that we're set to see today when you've got these two vice leaders or deputy leaders of these two nations?
So it is an official visit. So what we do understand is that in terms of the seriousness of this engagement, it's absolutely key, especially because, I mean, these are two powerful individuals, you know, second bosses, so to speak, in their countries. And also just in terms of the delegation accompanying the Vice President Xuan, you can really tell that the discussions really will be quite intense, but also happening at a very interesting time when you look at the geopolitics and how everything is shifting, but also Pretoria and Hanoi, they still do have commonalities in light of a very complex world that they do face. So we're not really expecting quite a lot, but obviously there's a red carpet that has been rolled out for the Vice President, and also you can tell that it's going to be a very interesting engagement, especially because we know that Vietnam is one of those very interesting economies. You know, they do also have a very turbulent history of wars, of colonialism, where they were really dominated, but they've been able to rise. And you know, you talk to the international relations experts, you know, they always say that Vietnam really is one of those countries that has risen from adversity to prosperity with all these challenges.
Yeah, and of course, so you've got notes from the presidency also talking about that relationship between the two nations, and also stating that South Africa and Vietnam trade amounted to 23.8 billion rand in just 2020. So we certainly will be watching closely for those proceedings. Thank you so much for that update. He, of course, is our reporter speaking to us from the Sefako Makato Presidential Guest House.